Well, hello, studio teacher friends. Christina Whitlock here, host of this podcast and your self-proclaimed anytime piano teacher friend. Thanks for joining me as we take a few minutes to unite in solidarity over the ups and downs of our chosen profession. And when I say ups and downs, I mean it. We all have days when we feel like we are on top of our game, and likewise, we all have days where we wonder if we know what we're doing at all. Today, I'm thinking about those peaks and valleys, and I'm offering what I hope is a timely encouragement to you. You are listening to episode 121 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Let's get to it. I think we've all grown up hearing metaphors like, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? Well, I obviously agree because I don't want to trust a chain with a rotted link. However, I think this idea sometimes seeps its way into other areas of our thinking where it doesn't necessarily apply, like teaching music lessons. Have you ever found yourself feeling discouraged because you had one, let's say, less than stellar lesson? Have you ever found yourself replaying a single studio interaction in your head over and over again? Have you felt guilty or frustrated with yourself over a lesson that didn't feel as successful as you wanted it to be? Well, if you couldn't already guess, I've been there. And as a chronic overthinker, an affliction many of you share, incidentally, I know that I am definitely guilty of perseverating on all the things that I could have, would have, should have done differently. The thing is, though, our students' experience is not shaped by one specific interaction. Our students' experiences are based on the sum of the whole. In other words, what matters is the overall accumulation of months or years of lessons. And one bad lesson, however you define that, is not going to destroy the legacy that you have built for yourself. I feel like I need to throw in a really strong disclaimer here that I am obviously not talking about colossally poor decisions or any kind of moral or ethical failures in today's contemplation. If you've ever felt like you've had just kind of an off day, maybe you were short-tempered or maybe you were really distracted, this is just part of life, my friend. You have to give yourself some slack, and your student relationships will withstand fluctuation in our day-to-day lives. Maybe you completely confused your student while you were introducing dominant seventh chords, and then you had to spend almost the entire lesson backtracking to try and get your student to feel confident in their knowledge again. This is okay. Your worst teaching day is one, let's consider it a tally mark, and just consider, that's one tally mark out of how many? Usually a lot of tally marks. Generally speaking, students are going to take a lot of lessons with you. Their perspective on their lessons are ultimately going to be based on the sum of their whole experience. So if you teach a less than great lesson, all you need to do is take note of your shortcoming, make a plan to correct course the next week, and move on. It is not realistic to expect yourself to be fully on top of your game every lesson of every week. I suppose it's also fair to remind you that we shouldn't judge ourselves too strongly on our best teaching days either. I have certainly had days where I felt like I've led every single student to a significant aha moment. And, those ones where everyone is making notable improvements and I don't know. I feel like Snow White when she's feeding the birds. Like the entire universe just seems to be delighted with me and my work. I mean, those are good days. Don't get me wrong. But I'm also setting myself up for disappointment if I expect every teaching day to feel exactly like that. Because the truth is, I am not always going to come up with the perfect analogy that makes that light bulb appear instantly over my student's head. I am not always going to come up with perfectly clever lyrics to sing over top of their musical phrases. Although I'm pretty good at it, I will say. I am not always going to have an infinite supply of patience. I wished that those were fair expectations, but they're just not. I've come to realize that our students' takeaway from their lessons is much more likely to resemble how we teach on our, average days. Not the days where you feel completely on top of the world, but also not the days where you feel down. Those average teaching days. The ones where you are just there, doing your work the best you can. Nothing special or over the top. Those are the best indicators of what kind of experience you are giving your students. And maybe it goes without saying, but we need to bring this same consideration to our students themselves. I mean, I know we evaluate our students constantly. It's kind of our job. And any honest teacher is going to tell you that based on any given day, we are going to have students that we enjoy teaching more than others. It's not that any single student is our constant favorite all of the time, but it's a moving target, constantly in flux based on who's having a real season of growth or who is feeling really safe and trusted in this environment and is willing to share and open up. But guess what? Our experience with our students is based on, you guessed it, the sum of our whole experience with them. Or at least it should be. We all know that the path to becoming a great musician is not tracked like a perfectly ascending line across a progress map. It's not how this works. Progress is messy. It's not linear. And in the end, it's very much a sum of one's entire musical experience. The sum of the whole, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm recording this episode today because I just keep finding myself coming back to this idea in other areas of my work. Very recently, I presented a session on dealing with busy teenagers at MTNA, and this is really a strong point in that presentation. A 12-week soccer season can definitely put a damper on that progress chart for a student. But it does not mean the sum of their entire experience needs to go down the drain. A student working through an emotional struggle is going to appear suddenly more difficult to work with in a lesson, but those difficulties do not negate all the work that you've previously done. A student who stops taking lessons, they don't get rid of everything you've taught them. They carry with them the sum of their whole experience. And isn't that encouraging? Isn't that a lovely change of pace to remember that you are not only as good as the last lesson you taught? Isn't it refreshing to hear that we are, contrary to popular opinion, allowed to have low energy days? We are allowed to feel a little meh about our work from time to time. The beauty of understanding the sum of the whole is the way that it allows you to reflect on your work on a broad scale. I mean, do you dread every single lesson with one student? Has it been like a year or more since you've felt any kind of spark while teaching them? Well, friend, that might be indicative of a larger issue. Do you consistently feel behind in your lesson preparations? Not just for a week or two, but like all of the time? Well, that's indicative of a larger issue. So, regardless, I hope this is a helpful reminder today. Let's stop trying to judge ourselves or our students on our very best or very worst days. What really matters in this teaching relationship is the sum of the whole experience. Let's toast. Studio music teacher friends from all over the world, today I release you from this idea that you have to be 100% on for every lesson every day. Now, it is true that we need to bring our best to each lesson. Our students do deserve it. But the truth is, our best is going to look different from day to day and season to season. So as long as you are showing up with the best that you have to offer today, we're all in great shape. May we know this truth for ourselves, and may we help our students understand the same thing. Because let's never forget that our students, generally speaking, are hoping to impress us in the lesson experience as well. Let's help them focus on big picture goals rather than the fluctuations that are inevitably going to come with each week. Cheers to the sum of the whole experience, my friends. Hear, hear. Thank you kindly for listening to episode 121, friends. I was very happy to be in your ears today. Hey, let me tell you about this. I mentioned earlier that I had recently given a session at MTNA. It was titled Busy Teens, Should They Stay or Should They Go? Suffice to say, this is an issue that we all run into from time to time. I keep getting requests from listeners to share the content from that session, so I'm going to go ahead and run a couple of free Zoom calls with a mini version of that presentation over the next couple of weeks. So for more information, make sure that you are on my email list. Head over to christinawhitlock.com/subscribe to make sure that you are in the know. The link is also in the show notes for this episode. Be sure to follow Beyond Measure Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. We have a good time over there in social media land. I know that we are all heading into intense times on the studio calendar. So stay well, my friends. Be encouraged, and remember that contrary to how it feels, there are so many teachers who are jumping through all the same hoops that you are right now as well. May we all remember that we are not made or broken by one single lesson. Rather, it truly is the sum of the entire lesson experience. Onward and upward, teacher friends. Go make it a great week.